بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings to you all. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me this evening. I'm really humbled, to be honest with you, to be here and to listen to the various talks from our distinguished speakers. I think Dave is the only one who's left, and it's really refreshing to see somebody who doesn't have an Islamic background, come from a Muslim background, to embrace our culture, embrace the language. I attempted to, if you like, start some Arabic classes within our local Muslim community here in Blanchardstown, and of course there isn't much appetite from adults, Muslim adults, or even teenagers, if you like, to learn Arabic. So when I see Sergeant Dave here, spending his spare time studying the Arabic language, it kind of asks some questions, I suppose, or raises some questions amongst our own community, wouldn't you think? The topic, I guess, or the theme of tonight's lectures is there's three big terms here that's being used, and I don't want to be overcritical, but look at that as something which is a positive criticism. Radicalization, Islamophobia, and integration. These in themselves can be probably individually tackled. In other words, you could talk about the issue of integration, talk about radicalization, talk about Islamophobia in probably separate settings. The topics are so big to deal with, and probably you could say even that the two, radicalization, Islamophobia, could be under, I suppose, the title of integration as being a problem or rather a symptom of poor integration in the community, whereby it leads to, for example, Islamophobia, or it could lead to radicalization. And may I add something which I think is important, when I spoke to some of the organisers as well, is that in this idea of integration, which is a lovely term that we like to use and so on, I think we as Muslims, we are guilty sometimes, and this is definitely not ill-intended, nor is it a result of people wishing any bad or any harm. But I think what we have to understand is that our labels, sometimes they don't do us any favours. So, like, for example, when we talk about integrated groups of Ireland, why label it Sudanese? Why not label it like Muslim integrated groups? Because Muslims, Sudanese, Algerian, Libyans, Tunisian, they're all facing the same issues. And to make it something which is a bit more inclusive, allow other sections of the community to become involved and to attend tonight. So it becomes something that can be effective, something which can, that can have an impact. And it's really just sometimes changing in name, how we advertise and promote the event as well. I think it's very important for future events, how we promote and advertise. I personally wouldn't have known about the event unless I was invited as a speaker. So that is something that's really moving forward into the future in terms of improving and building, I suppose, better understanding amongst the Muslim community, and something to bear in mind. Again, I don't want to see this, might seem a bit scattered what I'm talking. I'm going to just raise some points, maybe just, again, some food for thought rather than anything else. When we look at, for example, when we're talking about these three issues, radicalization, Islamophobia, integration. Now, when I look at those three major areas, if you like, I see that there's a common denominator. There's something which is essential for us to tackle these areas, or to, in some way, understand these issues more deeply. I see ignorance as being a real issue with all these particular fields, or these areas of themes. Radicalization, if you stem it and go back and we look at the film there, it's really ignorance at the end of the day that is the problem. There's a famous statement, or the famous saying, إذا علمت العلوم بغير شيخ ضللت على طريق المستقيم وتلتبس الأمور عليك حتى تكون أضل من توم الحكيم. This statement was often said among scholars when they're teaching their students. They would say, quote this line, these lines of poetry. If you desire knowledge without the shaykh, then you'll go off the correct path. And the issues will become confusing for you. You won't understand really what is intended by the texts, and you will become more astray than Tum Hakimi. So they explain who's this Tum Hakimi. This particular person wanted to study medicine, and he took all of the books of medicine and the Tib al-Nabawi and the prophetic tradition on medicine, and he studied these books. And one of the copies of the books that he had some errors. So he read the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the Habda Sauda, the idea of the black seed being the cure of, all ailments, all disease except for death. But the copy that he had was missing two dots, or one dot, Habba. Rather in his book, Hayya Sauda, which means, as we know in Arabic, snake, isn't it, bro? So he read this particular copy of this book. So what he did was he learned all this medicine, and he had all these patients. He says, I have the cure. So he took the snake and he, took the venom from the snake, and he ended up killing half of the village, What is the lesson in that? Seeking knowledge in our Islamic tradition has to come from those people who have lived the tradition, have studied the traditions, studied the religion in depth. And those people who can navigate the youth into understanding the text. We saw that in the video, the boys reading the Quran. That's beautiful. But understanding that Quran, how do you understand it? How do you interpret the Quran? And the father is trying his best to get his son on side and to give him that understanding, but he was falling on deaf ears. And I think as Muslims in the West, we have an enormous responsibility. Enormous responsibility, perhaps, and it's no doubt about it, it's very complex, very, very difficult. And it requires a lot of courage. It requires a lot of bravery on our part. But I think what's so important as well is that we have to remove the shackles of our culture sometimes. Unfortunately, and again, picking up on the video, when the young man, he says, I don't know, am I British or am I Sudanese? Framing of our youth that they have to be Sudanese or Algerian or Libyan Muslims, then they will never feel part of the community. That would be just a natural kind of feeling. There's nothing wrong with being called a Western Muslim or an Irish Muslim, or even, okay, no problem, Sudanese Irish Muslim. We don't need to put the baggage on them to make them feel that, that, because that is preventing Muslims feeling at home. Indirectly, psychologically, they don't feel, even though they're born here, raised here, and that's all they know. Perhaps they never even went home to their ancestral, home. So, this is critical. And there are many thinkers that have mentioned many of these issues, and there's lots of literature out there on that. And being part of the society, and I think it's very important that we as Muslims, we have universal values. Universal values we share with so many different communities. When we look at the young sister who talked about her discussions on the bus with her fellow colleagues in school, the topics of discussion center around what usually for Muslims? Hijab, halal meat, jinn, penal codes. It's as if those 5 areas, is what the Quran consists of. But we know, and those who are engaged in reading Quran regularly, that these probably take up 1 to 2 lines, 2 ayats, 3 ayats. What is the picture? What is the whole Quran? What is the message? Be truthful, be just, even if it's against yourself. Be honest, be good to your parents. Give in charity. Charity is a huge thing in the world. Huge thing. Be good to your neighbour. Universal values. The message is being lost. And we're allowing other people to control the narrative. And we get sucked into these long discussions. And of course, there's a time and place for the discussions. But what? We're missing the point. And sometimes I find that we don't do ourselves any favour either, because how do we teach Islam? Not with an educational background. And I question how Islam is taught. My own research was involved in Muslim schools, and we need to be critical of our educational institutions. Talking about qualifying of names, we always like to put Islamic in front of things. It's Islamic finance, it's Islamic schools, Islamic food, Islamic this, Islamic that. But these are not just Islamic things. They're shared by, sometimes, often, the community around us. We have Algerian schools, madrasas, Libyan schools, Sudanese schools. Just have a school, you know. The great school in Baghdad in the 12th century, during the Abbasid period, what was it called? Bayt al-Hikmah. It was the House of Wisdom. And in it flocked all traditions from all backgrounds. To learn what? To learn the sciences. To learn the tradition. Our labelling hampers us. It gets us into unnecessary problems. And our children, when they go to these weekend schools and so on, it's like we're trying to box them in, whereas throughout the week they're integrated, they're embracing other cultures and nationalities and so on. And then we just enclave them into this little school where we want to just give them something which is specific for our culture and our tradition. Until they get to 18 or 16, 17, 18, and they're just like, you know, you can't control them anymore, you can't force them anymore to go to these things. But also learning the culture of and the language. David, as an example, we don't keep picking and looking at David, but he's learned Arabic. It's not his language. He's not real right to learn Arabic. But we as Muslims, we are living in Ireland. So why aren't we learning the culture? Why aren't we reading the poetry? Why don't we allow, even sometimes we get exemptions from Irish. We don't want our children to learn Irish. No, don't learn Irish. You know, I don't know, folks. You know, get exemption from that. It's not important. But what's the consequence of that? The consequence of not learning Irish is that we don't have qualified Muslim Irish teachers who need Irish to be qualified teachers in the system. So, unless you have Irish, you cannot be a teacher in a state-funded national primary school. So we are suffering from that as a result. And also our focuses of study. What should we encourage our children to learn? We have James Carr as a sociologist. But how many Muslim sociologists do we have? How many of them get into the arts and the humanities? We want them to be doctors. We want them to be engineers. Why? We have to pay them good money. Where's the money comes? But what happens is that the community will suffer as a result of that. Yes, we'll have money. But you know what? If we don't have the minds and the brains, I'm not saying that doctors and engineers don't know nothing wrong. Okay? I'm going to copy paste here now and get in trouble. Right? But we need educational institutions. We need to know the content, which is the texts and the sources, but we also need to know the context of where we are, where we're living, so that we can navigate as Muslims our universal principles within our environment successfully, without compromising our values and our morals, but adding value to the community. We all have this idea of, okay, we have our own Muslim schools, our own this and that and so on. What's the added value of this? Are we just another one in the pile, another one part of the group, or are we adding value to the community? How does our values and our morals add value to our community? That's the difference. Not just being part of the community. How do we integrate and be part? How do we contribute to the community? And this is where I want to mention something which is very important. When we're talking about teaching of religious studies, if we look at the Sirah book, even in Arabic, an English copy of Sirah, and how we teach Sirah, what do you look at the contents page? Little introduction, and then we have what? Battle, this, battle, that. It's as if the Prophet ﷺ was fighting battles all his life. Where is his engagement with his family? Where is the discussion about how he's interacting with Hassan and Hussein, his grandchildren? How is it with him? He is with his wife? How he is in his mannerisms with the community and society, how he's dealing with non-Muslims, how he's dealing with those people who are spitting on him and insulting him, how is he dealing with those situations. Practical knowledge which we all need. The way we are teaching Islam is not doing the youth any favours either. We need to have good courses, good teachers, we need to invest in that. Everything is like, why would anybody want to go and study Islamic studies? And do what? Come back to what? There's no opportunities for that. Many children, not many, but there are a few, who say, for the Youcef, I'd like to go and study Islamic studies. But my father and my parents say, if I don't study Islamic studies, you'll get no job. There's no future. And that's the truth. There isn't. What are they going to do with it? But the reality is that we always need people to go and study. But we have to professionalise and make our institutions better, to have qualified people who run them, to update our curriculum, refresh it, so that it is reflecting the times that we're living and how the students and the youth to deal with their problems. We're dealing with two things abstractly. We're not dealing with things within a specific context. We import and export, we import modules and curriculum from outside that has no relevance to Ireland and Irish Muslims and the issues that are facing them. And when we look at the Prophet ﷺ talking about integration and ways to integrate, the Prophet ﷺ was a social activist before he received his prophethood. Before his prophethood. And that's what I'm saying, talking about Syria. How many Muslims know about the Hilf al-Fudul, the alliance of the virtues, where the Prophet ﷺ was part of this organization, if you like, which was involving non-Muslims, involving pagans. For what? For the objective of justice. So that anybody who came into Mecca, and it was known that if you're an outsider, and you came to do trade in Mecca, and unless you knew a tribe or you had connections, you weren't going to get your Jew, you weren't going to get your wife. And this Yemeni Abid was his name, he was very, very irate, because he went into Mecca to do some trade, and as a result, he wasn't getting paid. He was waiting around 1 week, 2, not getting paid. And he had enough of it. So he wrote a poem against the Quraysh. You call yourselves this, and you're so dignified man, and basically slamming them for their lack of, humanity when it comes to even just dealing in trade. And this resulted in, okay, let us set up this particular alliance, so that anybody from outside is coming to Mecca, we will be sticking up for their rights, and that they will get paid, and that they will be given their due. After the Prophet ﷺ, he received his prophethood, and many years after, he reflected on that particular alliance and said, if it existed today, I would still hold my place in that particular alliance. Meaning what? Meaning justice is not an Islamic concept. Honesty is not an Islamic concept. It's a universal shared value. And sometimes we feel that, as well, going back to the previous point about not feeling we don't feel we're part, we don't feel at home. And as a result, if we don't feel at home, then the reality is that the natural result of that is that we will not want to be participant in or participating in our communities. So, for example, we look at, the idea of charity and feeding the homeless. This concept of feeding the homeless and feeding those who are less fortunate than ourselves is a concept which comes in the Meccan surahs. And the Meccan surahs are the early days of Islam. When the Prophet ﷺ is facing persecution, he's facing so much hardship. But the Meccan surah and the ayat are telling the Muslims what? To feed the poor. Because poverty is not an Islamic problem. It's a human problem. Starvation is a human problem. It's so important. Why? And alhamdulillah, this is a good point to know. Some of you probably are aware. But alhamdulillah, in the GPO, for a long time now, there are a group of Muslims and Muslim sisters of ERA and some other groups as well are involved of giving food to the homeless. Cooking food. We're good at the food, isn't it? Right, we're good at that. So, They're giving that. Now, we don't do that for what? For PR? Good PR? No. There may be good PR coming from it, alhamdulillah. But why are we doing it? Because that's the Islamic thing to do. That's the Muslim thing to do. We're not doing it because then we want people to like us. If they like us, great. But just being a Muslim, just practicing your faith, that will transform our communities. And they will see the value of us just by doing those simple things. And why am I saying that? Because I find my own experience, and my own limited experience, that I think that within the mentality of Muslims, and particularly the older generation, there was this desire in the past that someday we will spend some time in Ireland and eventually we'll go home and we'll take the kids with us. And then eventually 1 year became 5 years and 5 became 10. And at the same time we're still putting our money and building our houses and doing all of that thing, hoping for big plans that we'll all shift home. And then what happened? Things changed. We got used to living here, we enjoyed living here, we realised that it's not easy just to go back like that. But the point I'm trying to make, and just maybe to conclude, is that in my Friday sermon, I mentioned how the Prophet was a social activist even before he was a prophet, and something he continued even throughout his life. And the idea of feeding the poor, and even just, let's collect some money, or not money, it wasn't even money, food stuff. So rice, tea, coffee, basics. And we'll make this a regular thing. And we will help, though, if you can't go to the GPO and you can't spend the Friday night there in the cold, there are plenty of people who will do that. But let's try to help them with some food. And unfortunately, I think I had one person out of a group of 300-400 people who gave perhaps some tea or coffee and some biscuits. And then completely, people lost interest. It made it clear to me, actually, and how sad it is, how we don't understand this is something which is part of, as Muslims, we read in the Quran about charity and so on and so forth, and the importance of these type of initiatives. Why? We worry about our children being occupied into various things and getting distracted and all the various influences. But you see children in the GPO giving out food and treatment. Why? Because that's an important thing. When the children are interacting with the community and they see people as fortunate, then it softens their heart. And they are active in doing something which is meaningful, occupying their time. Because when you give kids time, free time, we know what they get up to. But if you occupy their time and you give them good positive initiatives and to be involved within the community, they have no time to think about anything else that perhaps would be a bad influence on them. The idea of social engagement, social activity. And may I add something very important? And I encourage people to read this particular book. It's called On the Muslim Question by Anne Norton. She's a professor in American University. She tackles the whole idea of this class of civilizations myth, popularized by Samuel Huntington and others. And the reality on the ground is that this class of civilizations, this type of enmity that supposedly exists, is actually a myth. Because our lived experiences tell us the opposite. We eat, we drink, we buy, we sell, we marry, we engage, we play football, some of us anyway, some better than others. And we are part of the community, and will always have been. But sometimes these type of statements and isolated incidents hijack the discourse and the narrative. And sometimes we as Muslims become apologetic. Oh, it's not us, we're so sorry. Oh, why do you need to apologize? He's not representing you. And as a result, we have to understand. And just again, the final point. And again, this particular ayah comes in Surah Al-Hujurat. And this is a surah that comes later on in the Madani period. Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. So what does Allah say? All you people, we've created you into nations and tribes, female, male, and female, so that you get to know one another. And verily those who are closest to God are the God conscious. Verily God knows everything and well knows all things. That's God subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our efforts and to accept the efforts of the organisers and to help us to create more of these type of events. Jazakumullah khairan, barakallahu fikum.